Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya. Suklambaradharam Vitnam Sachivannam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashantaye Ananta Samsara Samudratara Naukaitabhyam Guru Bhaktidabhyam Vairagya Samrajyata Pujanabhyam Namo Namah Shri Guru Padukabhyam Anjana Nandanam Veeram Janaki Shokanasanam Kabisamakshagandaram Vande Lankabayankaram. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Yadangripangerugarenu lagnam Nipiya Niram Vimalantarangagam Janami Tattvam Nijamatmarupam Tam Naumi Narayana Tirthamaryam. Narayana Tirthamaryam. Namaskaram, all of you. Welcome to the 36th session of Krishna Leela Tarangini. In the last session, namely the 35th session, we saw the description of Gopii Vastrapaharam, the first of the two significant Leelas that Tirtha focused in Tarangam 5, albeit briefly. We also enjoyed some selective verses highlighting Sukha's narrations in chapter 22 of Dasamaskandam, and most of the slokams from Dasakam 60 of Narayaniyam from Bhattadiri also. Sukha and Bhattadiri amplified the reasons for such an episode and why the Gopikas had to go through the embarrassing punishment, which however finally resulted in the finest of blessings from Bhagavan. Tirtha was very brief. Tirtha, of course, was very brief towards the reasons behind the episode of Vastrapaharam, but brought out his poetic excellence when he narrated a samvadam between the pleading Gopikas and Govinda. The quintessence of this episode was and is Atmabodha. We will see about that very soon. You may remember that we stopped the opera after the Geetam 44, the song of the Gopikas making the plea to Krishna. In the last stanza, the Gopikas pleaded, Govinda kim karavama Gopa Balaka. Hey Gopa Balaka, Govinda kim karavama. Navya Gopi Geetamidam Narayana Tirtha Ruchitam. This is how it was actually finished. But the operating statement was Kim Karavama Govinda Gopabalaka. O protector of cows, you little cowherd boy, what shall we do now? Let us now listen to the slokam 126, followed by the song of the argument or samvadam in the form of a very nice Geetam, Geetam number 45. And the samvadim is so unique and very rarely sung. So we have attempted in two different ragams. So one line by Krishna and one line by Gopya Uchuhu. So each one will be in a different ragam. So I hope you enjoy that.
Gopii bigi prarthitasvevam Gopii bigi prarthitasvevam Govinda Govinda Buryanubragavam Kurvanastasu Samvadam Bhuyopyagrita Sadaram Bhuyopyagrita Sadaram Avaranam mama nahi te dhatum 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 Bhavaya gopavatu janabunda Bhavaya Gopavatu janabunda Avaranam mama nahi dhatum Bhavaya Gopavatu janabunda Devayada varana mamanita Devayada varana mamanita Dehi viva bhavada tadananda Devayada varana mamanita Dehi viva bhavada tadananda Nitam naiva maya parakiya Nitam naiva maya parakiya Naiva mama varana nija dritya Nitam naiva maya parakiya Naiva mama varana nija Agagrigaana bhavani diruvam Dehi tadavarana mahabandha Agagrigaana bhavani diruvam Dehi tadavarana mahabandha Akini milanam evamayotam Sakshadiyadu grihana-varanam Akini milanam evamayotam विहिता वर्ण लोक लोकन विहिता वर्ण लोकेश्वर मम देहि समुदित लोकेश्वर मम देहि समुदित लोकशावरणं न विदातुं लोके कोऽपि समर्थः पुरुषः लोकशावरणं न विदातुं लोके कोऽपि समर्थः पुरुषः कश्चन नालोकयति यदास्मान् कलयत इदमेव वर्णं कश्चन नालोकयति यदास्मान् कलयत इदमेव वर्णम् लोक्यानालोकयति लोके नालोक्यं कश्चन कामपि विरोधात् लोक्यानालोकयति लोके नालोक्यं कश्चन कामपि विरोधात् लोकया एव वयं परभोग्याः लोकशावरण विदेहि लोक्या एव वयं परभोग्यं लोकशावरण विदेहि तर्हि तदा वर्णैरलमल्पैः तस्य न किञ्चित् लोक्यमिहाति तर्हि तदा वर्णैरलमल्पैः तस्य न किञ्चित् लोक्यमिहाति किं न हि लौकिक सिद्धावरणं किं न वयमिह लज्जाभरणं किं न हि लौकिक सिद्धावरणं किं न वयमिह लज्जाभरणम् युक्तिसकं न हि भवता वर्णं योगिभिरिति मीमांसबल युक्तिसकं न हि भवता वर्णं योगिभिरिति मीमांसितमबला युक्तिसकं न हि भवता वर्णं योगिभिरिति मीमांसितं
You saw the slide showing line by line meaning as an argument between Sri Krishna and the gopis. In the first four exchanges, Tirtha uses singular, where the questions are from a single gopi and in the first person. But then in the fifth stanza, or maybe fifth stanza onwards, a switch happens to the plural because we see the usage of vayam. Of course, in the fourth stanza again, there is one sentiment expressed by Krishna, virodat. Virodat means here is an antithesis. In the fifth set or stanza, there is a term used called parabhogyaha. It doesn't have any bad sense. It can be interpreted as objects of enjoyment for others. We will see more on this soon. In fact, in the stanza number 5, again we see a term used, tasya. The term tasya is to be construed as per dative case meaning. With the removal of the veil, the Atma Swarupam of the maidens merges with the Atma Swarupam of Sri Krishna Paramatma. This is the message of the Gopi Vastrapaharam episode. But we'll go a little more deeper into that. The simple or apparent meaning was provided in the slide that was played with the song. All right. But the whole episode and the song, as from Krishna, have intense philosophical implications and hence demand at least an overview in many places, which Sukha, Bhattadiri, and Tirtha did more in detail, though not in identical terms. The tattva behind the various usages, such as virodat, as I said in antithesis, parabhogyaha, created for others' enjoyment, avaranam, yadavaranam, mamavaranam. In other words, it's avaranam, yadavaranam, mama avaranam, vihita avaranam, tadavidam eva avaranam. And then there is a word used, lokya, and then the answer is na lokayati, na lokyam, lokeshavaranam, siddhavaranam, lajjavaranaha, bhavat avaranam. The usages are so beautifully decked and they have been sewn very beautifully like an exquisite garment, and it is very profound. But the crown of all those usages is asmabihi na videyam kimapi. Asmabihi na videyam kimapi hyapagatam achyuta tadvada bhagavan. We do not know what should be done of or what has been taken away. That is how the gopis give up in the end and say, asmabihi na videyam kimapi hyapagatam achyuta tadvada bhagavan. Achyuta, please tell us, what should we do? The two works that overwhelmed me when I was reading the Tarangini opera eons ago, maybe several decades ago, and then over a period of time when I started reading them again for one program or the other, something that constantly really excited me when the opera was read was that the parallels from Viveka Chudamani, which of course has 580 verses, it is a crest well of discrimination. Viveka Chudamani and Atma Bodha, or self-knowledge, which is a work of 68 verses, both being the quintessence of Vedanta by one and only Sri Adi Shankara, believed to be the incarnation of Dakshinamurti. So Narayana Tirtha generously borrowed philosophical sentiment throughout his work from Viveka Chudamani as well as Atma Bodha. This particular episode is one where he had drawn from Atma Bodha. As per Advaita Siddhanta, Atma Swarupam is the only manifestation which is eternally and innately luminous. Outside of Atman, everything else that is seen or perceived in cosmos is without luminosity and also inert. This is a simplistic and bland interpretation. As mentioned before, the two profound usages, avaranam and parabhogya, can be safely interpreted through Atmabodha. Avaranam can be interpreted as the encumbrance or as clothing. Clothing or covering, you may call it. When the gopis plead with Krishna to return their clothes, Krishna says, as per Narayana Tirtha, I have no avaranam. Meaning, I have no encumbrances. How then can I give you any avaranam? How is it possible for me to give something which I don't have? Here, what he means avaranam is, first avaranam is encumbrance. When he says, how can I give you any avaranam? Here he means the cloches or clothes, something that covers or something that is really hiding. Again, the gopis tell him, oh Bhagavane, we are parabhogyas. We are creatures created for enjoyment of others. So we are eventually going to be pushed into somebody's home where we'll become someone's wife, and the rest of the life we will have to toil for them. We are parabhogyas. Or a milder meaning could be, this is how we are being perceived by others. You have to remember Krishna. In Bhagavan's reply, para is taken to mean the supreme being, and Krishna says that there is nothing in the world that can be shielded from the sight of para or Paramatman. He takes the parabhogya in a different manner. Parabhogya meaning they have been created purely for Paramatma. That is him. So thereby he assuages them by saying, you are not simply creatures created for somebody's enjoyment. You have been given birth because you will have to come to me eventually, the para or Paramatman. The whole song can be interpreted from an attempt to highlight the treatise on Atmabodha. The exquisite Atmabodha of Adi Shankara, which was written for his disciple Padmapada or Sanandana, describes in 68 verses the way to attainment of knowledge of the Atman. Just like the 580 verses of the Viveka Chudamani, the crest well of discrimination, the Atmabodha or self-knowledge explains in short form the ultimate reality or Brahman as the foundation of all that which is beyond name and form, Namarupa Nirvahakam, explained in detail by Tirtha himself. Brahman is of the nature of pure consciousness, often denoted as Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, but who can be realized only by pursuing the path of knowledge, not simply by worship alone. This work came to be known in the last dozen centuries as a separate Upanishad attached to Atharva Veda. At the time it was created, it may have been for a different scene, for a different purpose. But over the centuries, it has become a separate Upanishad by itself, adored by scholars and analyzed by scriptural experts as having been attached to Atharva Veda. Some of the samples from this magnum opus work, Atmabodha, which I had the fortune of stumbling onto in 1965, as a disgruntled 19-year-old with lots of unquenchable agitation, are being shared here. Let us listen to some of the Atmabodha verses, and I will also try to give you the meaning either through slides or by explanation after the slokas have been rendered. Bodho anya sadhanebhyo hi sakshat mokshaika sadhanam pakasya vanniva jnanam vina mokshana siddhyate. Arivondri nirmukti sadhanamagum பிற சாதனங்களின் பேராம் அறிவின்றி ஆகாது முக்தியுறல் அக்னியின்றி பாகமாகாதவாறு என்று அறி. அவிரோதிதயா கர்ம Na vidyam vinivartayet vidyam nigantyeva tejastimira sangavat vidyam nigantyeva tejastimira sangavat bodho anya sadhanebhyo hi sakshat mokshaika sadhanam pakasya vanyavajnanam vina moksho nasdhyati. Just as the fire is the direct cause of cooking and is the essential element for cooking, knowledge is the direct means of liberation. Compared with all other forms of discipline, knowledge of the self is the one direct means for liberation. Bhagavan Sri Ramana, who lived between 1879 and 1950, is believed to be a Jivan Mukta. And I cannot think of yet another contemporary self-realized soul referred to as Bhagavan. Ramana's angst that great teachings of Adi Shankara, who was none else than Dakshinamurti incarnate, should reach ignorant common men and all other uninitiated but curious humans. And that angst resulted in numerous works, writings, and speeches in Tamil, drawing from several of Sankara's pearls. One such is the Tamil poetry based on Atma Bodha. Ramana did identical number of Tamil verses to explain the 68 verses of Atma Bodha. Let me attempt to quote the equivalent of sloka number 2, which we just now saw from Atma Bodha of Shankara in Tamil from Ramana. Arivondre nermukti sadhanamaham pira sadhanangalin peram arivindri agadu muktiyurul akkiniyindri pagam agadavari endru ari. Simplistically put in Tamil, எப்படி மற்ற எல்லா பொருள்கள் சாதனங்கள் இருந்தாலும் நெருப்பு இல்லாமல் சமையல் செய்ய முடியாதோ, அதே போல எத்தனையோ விஷயங்கள் இருந்தாலும் கற்றறிந்தாலும் ஞானம் இல்லாத ஒருவனுக்கு முக்தி சித்திக்காது. ஏனென்றால் மற்ற வழிகள் எல்லாவற்றையும் விட தன்னை பற்றிய ஞானம் ஒன்றுதான் முக்தி அடைய நேர் வழி. This was Ramana's firm conviction, taken after the Atma Bodha slokam. In sloka number 3 of Atma Bodha, Shankara says, Aviroditaya karma navidyam vinivartayet vidya vidyam nihantyeve tejaha timira sanghavat. Simple karma cannot destroy ignorance, for it is not in conflict with or opposed to ignorance. Knowledge verily destroys ignorance as light destroys deep darkness. Once Kanchi Paramacharya explained this very succinctly, and he said about this verse, why should we study Vedanta? Before the question can be answered, we have to recollect the universal law of creation. Any ignorance can only be removed by knowledge. Therefore, Pada Puja, Yoga Sadhana, meditation, etc., they're all good, no doubt, but they cannot simply replace Jnanam or knowledge. Karma vidyam na vinivartayet. That is actually the message from Sloka 3 which you saw. Karma cannot destroy avidya. Thus Ramana said, the meaning of that Sloka 3 in the form of another Chayyul, Ariyamayku pagai andru adanal kanmam, Ariyamai thannai agatradu. Kanmam Ariyamai thannai agatradu. Kanmam is karma. Arave அழிக்கும் அறியாமை ஒளி அந்தகார கும்பு ஒழிக்குமாறு என்றே உணர். அதை அழிக்கும் சக்தி ஒன்றே ஒன்றுக்குத்தான் இருக்கு. அது ஒளிக்கு மட்டும்தான் இருக்கு. அஞ்ஞானம் போக வேணும் என்று செய்யப்படும் கர்மங்கள் எல்லாம் அஞ்ஞானத்துக்கு எதிராக செயல்படாததால் அவைகள் அஞ்ஞானத்தை நீக்குவதற்கு வழி இல்லை. ஞானம் ஒன்றே அஞ்ஞானத்துக்கு எதிராக செயல்படக்கூடியதால் அது ஒன்றே ஞானம் எனக்கு இல்லை என்ற அறியாமையை போக்கும். I do realize that some in our satsangam, especially children, may have difficulty following these high voltage Tamil codes and Tamil discussions. But for those who are fascinated by Bhagavan Ramana and his simple capsule pearls on Atma Jnanam, I would like to quote 3 more from Shankara and Ramana's Tamil translation, simply in a very fast basis. Atmatu satitam praptopi aptraptavad avidhyaya tannaso praptavad bhati swakantavaranam yata. This is sloka number 44 of Atma Bodha. Atman is an ever-present reality. Yet because of ignorance, Atman is not realized. Only upon destruction of ignorance or avidya, Atman can be realized. Why? It's like the missing ornament on one's own neck. That's the analogy given. Swakantavaranam yata, just like a missing ornament on one's own neck. What does it mean? It's not unusual for most of us searching for an ornament around our neck or a vastu which is right with us on the neck or in pocket, but we'll be going around searching for it again and again, even though it's right there. Some people wear their reading glasses, but they put it on top of their temple with a tie-up. But later on, they will be searching for the glasses all over without realizing it is right there on their temple. That's a similar analogy used here. Swakantabharanam yata. Anma எப்போதும் அடர்ந்துள்ளதே. ஆனாலும் தான் மடமையால் அடைதாயிரு மான்மடிய வெய்த பெற்றார் போல் இலகுந்தன் கண்ட அணி எய்த பெற்றார் போலவே என்றார் ரமணர். The meaning for this. Shravanaadivihi uddipta jnanagni paritapitaha jivaha sarvamalan muktaha swarnavad dhyotate swayam. Trial by fire or refining adulterated gold. The goldsmith converts dirty gold into pure gold. We call it Pudamitta Tangam. Jivaha sarvamalan muktaha swarnavad dhyotate swayam. Sravanamadigalattre suru jnana veriyinir kaichi edukka Thiruvaiyarum poi Chivan maruvil pon ponir malanagit tanulirvan. This is what Ramana said. Jivaha sarvamalan muktaha swarnavad dhyotate swayam. Jnana is the fire in which all the avidya is thrown in, and what comes out of it is knowledge about Atman. Finally, the sloka number 67 of Atma Bodha summates it. Hrida kashodito hi atma bodhabhanus tamopahriti sarvavyapi sarvadhari bhati bhasayate akilam. The Atman, the sun of knowledge that rises in the sky of the heart, destroys the darkness of the ignorance, pervades and sustains all, and shines and makes everything else around it to shine. Tayaveli thondri irulai ali jnana udaya ravi anma oliru nidamume ellavatrum paravi ellamum taangi nin ellam olirvikkume. I've talked earlier about my struggles towards a simplistic attempt at understanding my angst, anger and frustration on humanity around us, the greed, how people are less and less compassionate. All these used to trouble me. People can easily manage poverty around themselves while they are really careful to protect themselves. They could not help poverty around the rest of humanity. All these things used to bother me as a young teenager, even in early 20s, but it will be bubbling with anger. Then I wanted to know what is the reason for my anger. Using the word self-realization when I was 18 or 19 or 20 may tantamount to arrogance or ignorance. I don't want to do that. But that struggle led to self-searches. I often use the word thedal whenever I talk to the disciples. Thedal. We should be constantly searching. If you search and search and search in various corners and crevices, you will have answers someday. Such struggles and experiments were narrated in lectures on Kanchi Paramacharya in a dozen sessions on YouTube Ragasri channel, which is available. And also, more of them are being narrated in monthly contributions to magazine known as Kamakoti. More than 15 sessions have gone on that also. For those who are interested about all these personal struggles and about the thirst and the effort to find myself, you may refer to those at your leisure. Great souls like Narada, Vedavyasa, Sukhabrahman, and many more that followed them to shower pearls of wisdom and Vedanta and mankind include Adi Shankara, Vedanta Deshika, Kirtankars from Abhanga tradition, Narayana Bhattadari, Narayana Tirtha, Bhagavan Ramana, and Jagadguru Kanchi Paramacharya, the God who walked in human form, Nadamadam Devam. They all gave us pearls of wisdom, either by their original works or by interpretation of the original works of other great souls. Reading Vedanta and our Puranas is one thing, but absorbing the intent and purport from every incident or narration came and come from the wisdom of these great Acharyas. Let's now see how Sukha concludes the whole thing. Tasam Vijnaya Bhagavan, Tasam Vijnaya Bhagavan, Swapada Sparsakam Yaya, Tasam Vijnaya Bhagavan, Swapada Sparsakam Yaya, Dhrutavratanam Sankalpam Agadamodaro Balaga, Dhrutavratanam Sankalpam Agadamodaro Balaga, Sankalpa Viditaha Sadhyo Bhavatinam Madarchano Maya Anumoditaha So Satyo Bhavitu Margati Namaya Veshita Diyam Namaya Veshita Diyam Kamaha Kamaya Kalpate Barjita Kwatita Danaha Prayo Bijayane Shate Barjita Kwatita Danaha Prayo Bijayane Shate. As I said, Sukha was concluding it by saying, Tasam Vijnaya Bhagavan Swapadaha Sparsha Kamyaya Drutavratanam Sankalpam Aha Damodaro Abalaha. Bhagavan knew very well the determination of the Gopikas and why they did their Katyayani Vratam. He also knew the Gopikas wanted to simply touch his lotus feet. That's all their prayer. And thus, Damodara, the great Krishna, spoke to them. Sankalpo viditoho sadhyo bhavati nam madarchanam. Maya anumoditaha soso satyo bhavitum arhati. Oh, great girls, saintly girls. You are not ordinary girls, you are very saintly. I understand that your real motive in this pratam or austerity has been to simply worship me and nothing else. That intent of yours has been fully appreciated by me, and indeed it will come to pass because you achieved the real purpose of your vratam. Namaya Veshita Diyam Kamaha Kamaya Kalpate. It's a very profound Srimad Bhagavata Vakyam often used. Namaya Veshita Diyam Kamaha Kamaya Kalpate. Parjita Kvachita Dhanaha Prayo Bijaya Neshate. The desire of those who fix their hearts and minds on me, does not lead to material karma for sense gratification. You should know that. And I know, therefore, your desire. Once you have fixed your hearts completely on me, you won't have any more thoughts about material karma or any sense gratification desire unto you, because all those have been completely eradicated. The only thought remains is an aikyam or sambandham with me, a total union with me. Why? When the concentration happens, it is like the barley corns burned by the sun and then cooked. They can no longer grow into new sprouts. Bharjita kudita danaha prayo bijaya neshate. Similarly, when you have done all the vratam for unification with me and that siddhi has been attained, you won't have any more desires of kama or sense gratification. The gopis were certainly attracted to Krishna in a mood of conjugal love, but having fixed their minds and indeed their entire existence completely on Bhagavan Krishna, their desire to have any conjugal unity with him could never manifest as materialists thereafter. Even though we are going to explain Rasa Leela, how it happened and what happened, rather it became the most exalted form of love of Bhagavan ever seen within the universe. That's why gopis have achieved the highest status in terms of bhakti. Tirtha echoed Sukha in saying, there is no avaranam or covering needed for all other things in creation. A simple example is a smart man who is desirous of undisturbed sleep. What he does is he switches off or shuts off light from a lamp in his room. Only the lamp he switches off. He does not end up covering all other objects which are non-luminous in the room. The room may be having a lot of clutter with a lot of things. The only thing he is focused on switching off is the light so that his sleep is not disturbed. So thereby the avaranam is not required for all other things. Krishna therefore says that the real Atma Swarupam that do not require any covering or avaranam is him and the Gopikas combined. Not only he says, I am the real Atma Swarupam here, I with you is the real Atma Swarupam. This is the boon he gives. None of the cover or avaranam, clothes worn, the bodies, the senses, is anywhere close to the real soul, namely Atma Swarupam. Regrettably, Atma Swarupam is covered by humans by their avaranam known as ajnana or darkness or lack of knowledge. That false cover or ajnana continue to be the myth and this cosmos, creation, bodies, and who mistakenly feel that senses appear to be real. Therefore, if the avaranam known as ajnana is shed completely or caused to be discarded, the Atma Surupam of Gopikas and that of Sri Krishna Paramatma becoming unified one and the same. Thus, Krishna successfully attempted to burn the veil of ajnana to give them the ultimate realization. We just now saw Shankara's and Ramana's reiteration of this particular revelation. That was the third sloka which I sang a little while earlier. Aviroditaya karma navidyam vinivartayeti. Aviroditaya karma navidyam vinivartayeti. Vidya vidyam nihantyeve tejas timira sanghavat. Ariyamakku pagai andru. Ariyamayku pagai andru. அதனால் கண்மம் அறியாமை தன்னை அகற்றாது. அறிவே அழிக்கும் அறியாமை ஒளி அந்தகார கும்பு ஒழிக்குமாறு என்றே உணர். Gopis realized this truth. And that was the Atma Bodha that Krishna did. Krishna was the eternal light that shone the light in the hearts of the gopis and thus dispelled the avaranam or cover, namely avidya. Narada Tirtha concludes this Leela with 2 slokas and of course takes us to the next major episode through sloka 129, which we will see in the next session. Avalyame tat yushmakam Avalyame tadyushmakam avalaha kevalam matam ubhasyameva hastahabhyam grinantu vasanani vaha yudyuktva vasananyasam dattva gopalakai saha avaruhyataroho krishnahaya avaruhyataroho krishna prayayam swagriham udaya ityuktva vasananyasam dattva gopalakai saha avaruhyataro krishna prayayo swagriham muda. Before we move on to the next episode, Govardhanodharanam, let us quickly browse a few slokams in chapter 22, which are pearls from Sukha on the need to protect the trees and environment. And that message in today's context is more than essential, or I would say urgent, for survival of mankind. He contemplated at the end of Dwapara Yuga. Sukha said to Parikshit in Sloka 28, 29 and 30, having been instructed by Bhagavan Krishna, the young Gopikas brought themselves only with great difficulty to return to the village of Braja, meditating all the while upon Bhagavan's lotus feet. Sometime later, Bhagavan Krishna went quite a distance away from Vrindavana, herding the cows. When the sun's heat became intense, Bhagavan Krishna saw that the trees were acting as umbrellas by shading him and all his friends and cattle, and thus he spoke beautifully his pearls of wisdom on the essential reason to protect the trees to his Gopalaka friends. He stoka Krishna he amso. He stoka Krishna he amso Shidaman Subalarjuna Vishala Vrishabha Jaswin Deva Prattavaru Tapam Pashyataitan Mahabhagan Parartaikanta Jivitan Vadavarshya Tapayiman Sahanto Varayantinaha Aho Yesham Varam Janma Sarva Prani Upajivanam Sujanasyeva Yesham Vai Vimukayanti Nartinaha. In those three slokams, 31, 32 and 33, Krishna beckons his friends. He lists the names of all his dear buddies. He Stoka Krishna, He Amsu, He Sridama, He Subala, He Arjuna, O Vishala, Vrishava, Ojasvi, Devaprastha and Varutapa. Just see these great fortunate trees whose lives are completely dedicated to the benefit of others. Even while tolerating the wind, rain, heat and snow, they protect us from these elements. One may wonder why Krishna suddenly started praising the trees here right after packing all the Gopikas to Gokulam and then taking the Gopalakas to the forest for herding the cattle to pastures. As per Srimad Bhagavatam sequencing, the next episode described in chapter 23, it's fairly long with 52 slokams, is about blessing the Yajna Patnis or Brahmana Patnis, about which we had already seen pretty elaborately in sessions 25, 26 and 27, since Tirtha had sequenced it in his opera after the episode of humbling Brahma, the son of Mahavishnu. Thus, Krishna was deliberate in indicating that trees were dedicated to the welfare of others are definitely far superior to the Brahmanas who lacked basic compassion to the hungry Gopalaka boys when they went to seek food. We saw all that pretty elaborately. In Sloka 33, Krishna says, just see how these trees are maintaining every living entity. Aho yesham varam janma sarva prani upajivanam. Sujanasyeva yesham vai vimuka yanti nartinaha. Sujanasya eva. Their birth is successful. Their behavior is just like that of great personalities. But anyone who asks anything from a tree never goes away disappointed. That's why they are so great. In fact, in the end, in Sloka 34 and 35, which we will be listening now, it has a much stronger message. Patra putpa palachaya moola valkala darubihi gandha niryasa basmaya gandha niryasa basmati tokmaihi kaman vitanvadeye patra putpa palachaya moola valkala darubihi gandha niryasa basmati Tokmai kaman vitanvate yetavat janma sapalyam dehinamiga dehishu pranaihi artairdiya vacha shreya acharanam sada shreya acharanam sada. Just as I mentioned, Sloka 34 and 35 are very significant for the message. In 34, Krishna says, Patra Pushpa Palachaya Moola Valkala Dharubihi. Patra Pushpa Palachaya Moola Valkala Dharubihi Gandha Niryasa Basma Asti Tokmaihi Kaman Vitanvate. These trees fulfill everyone's desire. How do they fulfill the desire of anybody who comes to them? With their leaves, flowers, fruits, their shade. Patra, Pushpa, Pala, Chaya, even their shade. Moola, Valkala, Darubihi. Roots, bark and wood. Gandha, Niryasa, Basma. And also with their fragrance, sap. Even when you burn them with their ashes. The pulp, when they rot. And shoots. At the end, when everything is gone, from the roots again shoots start. All these things come from the single tree. Etavat janma sapalyam dehina amika dehishu pranaihi artair diha vacha shreya acharanam sada. It is the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of all others created in this world. With his own life, wealth, intelligence, and words, because he has to learn from the trees. Trees give everything. Even for those people who kill the tree, cut off the branches, cut off their body, they're willing to give them in the form of wood. When discarded pieces are all allowed to rot, they give it in the form of pulp. When it is burned, in the form of ashes. And anything left over from there, they even give fresh shoots. That has to be learned as a lesson that every living being has to work for the benefit and live for the benefit of others. And they should be able to give their life, wealth, intelligence, and everything else. Pranaihi artairdiya vacha shreya acharanam sada. Drawing on these sentiments, Bhagavan Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in Sikshastakam, which I have said earlier, probably on an earlier occasion, Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sagishnuna Amaninam Anadena Kirtaniyaha Sadaharihi. One can chant the holy name of Bhagavan in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. Trinadapi Sunichena. He can think that I am even thinner and useless compared to the straw in the street. And one should be more tolerant than the tree. Tarorapi Sagishnuna. மரத்தை விட பொறுமையானவன் யாரும் இருக்க முடியாது. பட் sadhus are definitely more patient than a tree. Not only they are devoid of all pride and sense of false prestige, they are also ready to offer all respect to others even who have offended them. In such a state of mind does a sadhu chant the holy name of Bhagavan constantly. That is the definition of a sadhu. Let us see the next major episode, Govardhanodaranam, in the next session. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sagishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadagari. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sagishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadagari. Kirtaniya sadagari. Narayana 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 Hare